Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Spec Commentaries. I'm your host, Spec Son of InYourHeadOnline.com, place to be to get all your wrestling news and information, hang out with us crazy peeps on the In Your Head message boards, and also have my own YouTube channel here. And for those who are currently listening to this or watching this on YouTube, thank you very much for checking this out. I know it's been a while since I uploaded a new edition of Spec Commentaries, but as I mentioned during my first episode, I usually do this whenever there's something regarding the business that comes to my mind that I really want to convey to the World Wide Web, so to speak. So during this edition, as you can see on the marquee, I'm going to discuss a topic that many wrestling fans, whether you may be a so-called smart fan or someone who doesn't pay that much attention to the wrestling business, but you know the term, and basically the term is a draw. And we use this term a lot in terms of our wrestling jargon. And whenever we discuss wrestling with our friends, or if you're really, really smart to the business, like the majority of us are, and we contribute to the discussion of the business through message boards and stuff, we use this a lot. And in my opinion, I see the word used really incorrectly in a lot of ways that today, compared to the way it was used several years ago. I just think that the word has been rephrased and redefined by several wrestling fans that, in my opinion, really don't know what the term really means. And one can make the argument that it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but to me, a draw is basically a guy or a company that's able to so-called draw fans into the arena and to watch and to pay attention to their product, their character, to the point where they're going to pay their hard-earned money to actually go see the wrestlers perform. And I think that many fans try to use what the term meant several years ago to what it means now. And I think the term has been, it's been redefined over the last several years. And I think the term changes as the business changes. Now, to me, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago in the business, a draw was a guy who could talk the fans into the building. Now, before the evolution of television, you drew in other ways in terms of mass producing your product to different segments of the population, and you do it through other means of mass communication. In television, you didn't have television in your need. It was a necessity if they had it, but they didn't have the technology at the time to do it. So there was other ways that you do it, whether it be through direct communication with fans at arena, through your local newspapers, through articles, a lot of co-branding with the media and the different companies that represented the newspapers. The people, before the advent of television, there was other ways that you had to draw fans into the arena. And you relied on that big superstar talent, the marquee of your organization, to go out there and convey the message. And then you have other people who were a part of the company at the time, or companies, and they would do the same thing. And that's building the match up. Now, to me, in order for a wrestling card to draw fans in, you need a collective effort. So when I see and hear people say that, even back then, there's one thing that I think is a common thread in terms of the term draw, is that you need everybody in the company to actually draw the card. And it's not necessarily just that one guy all the time. Now, he is your big main piece. Like, for instance, if you have a Luthez in the mid-1940s or early 1950s to draw into your company, even with the advent of television, you're going to have that big main event marquee to people to actually come and watch the show. But in order for people to stay interested prior to the main event, you have to have guys under the card to also sell your program as well. And I think that that gets lost in the shuffle when you hear a lot of wrestlers or your fans use the word draw. That's the one common threshold I think you can actually paint in terms of that word. Everybody has to do their part in order for fans, in my opinion, to go to the show. Now, you have guys who are higher in the card, like a Luthez or Hulk Hogan or Ric Flair, who have to do a little bit more because their match is on the marquee. But it doesn't necessarily mean that every fan is going to go to that show because the main event guy built his portion of the card in. Now, you also had guys like as I mentioned, Ric Flair, who would, if you go back into the 80s, he would always put over the company itself. Not necessarily just his match, but in terms of the entire company. And that was the antithesis of a guy who was a big money draw. And as the NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, he put over everything and everybody related to the National Wrestling Alliance, and specifically wherever he was at the time during a specific territory. Whether it be World Class Championship Wrestling, whether it be Portland, whether it be in Japan, whether it be in the Carolinas, in Georgia or Florida. Ric Flair put over that specific territory, and he put over the big match and also the matches that were going to happen that night on the card. That's not a very easy thing to do, but it needed and warranted at that time in order for that particular card and company to draw as a whole. And that's why that term draw is an evolution kind of thing. Now you fast forward into the 90s and now you don't have that same need because you have so many different areas of communication to convey fans to actually come to watch your product. No longer do you need that big time superstar to plug everything about the organization, to put over the organization as a whole like a Flair did or a Harley Race or a Dusty Rhodes. You don't need that anymore. And I think this really started with the WWE and Hulk Hogan in around the mid 1980s. If you go back and you look at the tapes, Hulk Hogan wasn't doing any of that stuff. He was just putting over his character, putting over the match, and in some respects putting over the company. But he never, ever really dove into it like a Ric Flair did and put over everything in order for fans to actually care about the entire product as a whole. Hulk Hogan was the face, and he was one of the biggest draws of all time. But he had to do less than what other people may have had to do. And it's a variety of factors that led to that being the case. Now, you look at a John Cena today, who is vastly considered the biggest money draw in the WWE over the last 5 years. He doesn't have to do any of that stuff either. But there's an argument to be made of what really is a draw now compared to what it was 20 years ago. And that's exactly the point. A John Cena can just go out there and be himself and be his character. With the WWE and social media and all these other avenues of communication, WWE Films. I mean, WWE is a multi-million-dollar entity that's really good at communicating its message to a vast public in so many different areas that people know their company, and most likely they'll watch even if they don't like a John Cena. And that has been that's been the case for a variety of years. John Cena really doesn't talk people into the building. John Cena just portrays a character that the WWE Hype Machine has built for basically for over 5-6+ years with him, and he has an identity and people know him and recognize him, but people are not necessarily just going to the shows because John Cena talks them into the arena. His character that he portrays on television and on a big media conglomerate in the WWE, that has drawn fans to the building to go see him and care about him. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it's less verbal now than what it was. It's less direct. Instead, it's kind of indirect. And that's how people like a John Cena can draw attention to fans and bring them to the seats. Now, in case of a total nonstop action in TNA, I've made the case for over 4 or 5 years that TNA doesn't draw anything. And a lot of that has to do is they're trying to use the WWE's model and system in terms of trying to draw fans into the arena. but they fail on it almost in every way. They're not a good company in terms of communications, in my opinion. They don't go out there and promote the product extremely well, if well at all. And they perform in Orlando, Florida, in a basically a Disney studio, and you really don't know what type of fans, if they're real fans or they're just people who are tourists. And I sort of lean to the latter, but it's the same kind of crowd all the time, and they're never really going out to other areas on a consistent basis to truly have a feel about who their fan base and their product is. It can't just be the internet. If you're going to draw fans in, and once again, if you're going to draw the fans in, you got to probably do a little bit more non-traditional methods than what they're doing right now. I think their social media phase is doing extremely well, in my opinion. They're really was one of the first professional wrestling products entities to actually go on YouTube and actually promote their product that way. But if you watch a TNA Impact show, they barely even mention a lot of the good stuff that they do on YouTube to actually draw more fans into their product. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that TNA, to me, is a place that really doesn't draw anything. I don't think they should probably go back to a more non-traditional form of drawing fans into the arena. You know, start having a lot more interviews and stuff with wrestlers, direct with somebody like a JB, Jeremy Borash, and tell him point blank, all right, we're going to be at this arena, at that arena, here and there, and we want you to do this and that, and convey to the audience, all right, we want you to come to this show. And then you tell some of your top wrestlers that, all right, I want you to also go out there and do the same thing that JB is doing to drive home that point. Because TNA, I think they think they're bigger than what they actually are. And I've said, and one of the things I said that they should do is go back to a more non-traditional format, like Jim Crockett Promotions did, pluck everything regionally speaking, and bring your fan base into the Florida area, and it would be so great if they did that, in my opinion, and I think it would help them out tenfold. But they want to be like the WWE, but they don't have the resources, and their brand isn't strong enough. You got to look at the WWE is a near 30-plus year brand of the Vince McMahon Jr. era. That's not the case with TNA, and many people still don't even know what TNA is. But when I get upset is when I see a lot of wrestling fans say that, all right, this guy in TNA isn't drawing worth of anything. And I say to myself, no one really in this entire era in professional wrestling really draws anything. It's usually the company that does it. But in case of TNA, the company really doesn't draw much of anything. And the wrestler, they don't have any wrestler. They don't have a John Cena, someone that they built up for so many years that's going to draw a huge amount of fans into the arena just because they give him a big push. TNA can give Jeff Hardy. I mean, Jeff Hardy's a great example. He's one of the biggest faces of all time, one of the biggest superstars. And really, over the last 5-6 years in the business, he was just pushed to the moon by the WWE Hype Machine as a big fan favorite. He goes to TNA, they turn him heel, and even when he was a face, it just wasn't there to actually draw fans in there. You need much more than just giving a guy a good storyline and giving him a good push for that individual to really draw fans in this day and age. You're going to have to do a whole lot more, and it's really an entire organizational effort to draw fans to your product. Yes, I'm talking about top guys, but you got to have everybody who is on television and who is being pushed and who is giving an opportunity to succeed to draw and help you. And you got to put them in specific situations in order for that to happen. And there's been too many times where WWE doesn't do it, but they're able to get away with it because you have the big WWE Hype Machine, and they have so many other avenues to draw fans in. TNA doesn't. They don't have that. So TNA is struggling creatively, and they're struggling organizational-wise in order to draw fans to their product. And that's the biggest problem with TNA that I have with them. And also the fans that keep saying, oh, these guys aren't drawing. These guys aren't drawing here or drawing there. Well, I've yet to meet one person or see one person ever in TNA to actually draw